In every practice, there are questions that go unasked. Questions about revenue left on the table, questions about documentation and workflows that frustrate staff, questions about contracts, compliance, and culture that no one wants to touch. At Practice Perfect, we ask those questions, because that's how you get closer to perfect. Each week, you'll hear from voices across healthcare, industry leaders, revenue experts, culture builders, technology innovators, and legal minds, all bringing fresh perspectives to the challenges practices face. The conversation starts now with Jennifer McNamara and Maya Turner.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Practice Perfect podcast. My name is Jennifer McNamara. I'm your host, and once again, I have my lovely co-host, Maya Turner. Welcome back, Maya.
Hello, everybody. Happy Hump Day.
Oh, yeah, it's Wednesday. Wow, what a whirlwind. We've both been so busy and traveling, and we want to apologize to our audience. We haven't been on for a little bit, but we're going to give you more action in the next, few weeks. We'll have podcast episodes. We'll have more for you, I promise. And today is just, what a whirlwind. I know Maya, both of us off and on, we're attending the CPT symposium that is going on right now. My brain is full just from the little bit I was able to attend. I'm going to try to go back and listen to what I missed. But man, what did you think?
It's always a lot of information, and I especially like when the CMS directors join, because they give a lot of insight on why they do certain things based upon the final rule. It's very enlightening. It's really game changing when you hear the inside scoop, because then you're able to relay that information to providers as it's being presented. So it's very worth spending the investment to attend, because you become that much more valuable to your practice. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I was glad, at least the things I was on my mind was telehealth and then the skin substitutes. And I was like, hey, two things in a row that I'm waiting to hear. So it was nice that I got to hear, what I was waiting for. But let's get to our episode. So Maya, do you hear that sound? Do you hear
it? What is the sound? It's something that's coming up. Is it fear? Is it, what is it? What is it?
It's the sound of silence. And you can't hear it, but there's a cost to it. So today's episode is on the cost of silence when leaders avoid toxic behaviors. Ooh, chilling, right? I mean, that silence that we're hearing out there is pretty deafening.
You know what? There's a saying, silence is the worst kind of response, because especially when something is so obvious and silence is there, it's almost as if it's the calm before the storm. And really, calm is silence before the storm. So if you think about it from that metaphoric perspective, it really does change some dynamics, and it really makes it obvious for things to be addressed.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we're going to talk about some of the, effects of this, or I mean, what causes it, right? What is it? What leads to this? We're going to talk about burnout. We're going to talk about some toxic behaviors that exist. And I have some insights into what you can do to kind of alleviate some of those. And without having to go through drastic measures, there are just very basic practical things that you can do to kind of help some of these issues that might pop up in your organization. So let's talk about the first item here, why leaders stay silent. What are some of the things that we're seeing out there, Maya?
Well, first of all, I think one of the reasons why leaders stay silent, because they don't want to offend anybody. They're afraid of being wrong. They're afraid of confrontation. And while that's safe, that's almost the worst thing that you can do, especially when it affects the culture of the office. Really, I mean, especially when you're dealing with that one toxic employee that nobody wants to address, and they don't want to be the bad guy, but it really does the opposite. If you don't address it, it's just going to get bigger and bigger, just like that cough that is more than a cough, and you avoid going to the doctor, and it becomes something a lot more than what you believe it to be. So in my eyes, silence is probably more toxic than not speaking at all. Or speaking more. And, it's just You know what I'm trying to say. I just think that if you speak and you don't say or address the problem, it's worse than not speaking at all. That's what I'm trying to say.
100%. And that fear is also fear of turnover. Like I think that's a big one. We experienced that. I was helping practice with their workflow, and part of that was interviewing the employees to figure out, are they in the right role, or like, is there something else we can help them with? Like that was my job to help them figure out, are there resources that they need to do their job? And there were some employees that were very toxic from what I had heard and what I experienced just meeting them. And that's not to say that they are a lost cause in any way in the organization, but there were definitely some issues. And what I found out from leadership was that some physicians and others were afraid to deal with it because they just felt like in the area they lived in, it's hard to come by with people that are experienced in that role. And I totally get it. I get it that you have this workflow you're dealing with, you have patients, you're on the schedule, like you have a lot of things coming. And if you, let's say, get rid of or you let go of this person that has been there and knows where the bodies are buried, it's
Hmm.
like you just like, what do we do, right? But is that a
Yeah,
reason to hold on to
it's not.
someone who is affecting your staff? Like, let's talk about the ripple effect of this. If this person stays in the organization and continues to corrupt your current staff and it's affecting their mental health, their productivity, you're already dead in the water because you're losing money every day from lack of productivity.
Yeah. And I also think that not only productivity suffers, but quality suffers, right? Because I mean, think about the person who's ready to go, right? And they have this toxic environment. Are they really thinking about the quality of work that they're doing? Mm, I don't think so.
Mhm.
And so when you think about those variances and the toxicity of an environment and how people are afraid, right? How does it really affect the quality of work that is supposed to be effective and productive, right? It just doesn't fit well in the puzzle. And at the end of the day, you really need to get to the heart of the matter and say, okay, why did you make these mistakes? Well, because I was told or this person said. So you got a lot of different variables to why toxicity and avoiding the bigger issues can really hurt an office overall.
100%. And, not every office, I'll be honest, like if I've been out there and there are some smaller offices, they don't have an HR. They don't have an official HR to deal with these situations. And so they're just trying to manage them as they can. There's no accountability. And people think they can just get away with things because they have been getting away with them. So what's to stop them from continuing that behavior? So again, someone's got to stop the cycle. So what's the cost though? Like let's go to the next segment. What is this costing you? It's costing, I mean, on a physical level, I've been there in management. I'm there now sometimes as a CEO. The burnout is real. Like there are days where I feel completely burnt from end to end and I can't continue anymore. I've got to turn that computer off, get away from people and just shut it down, get like glass of wine and get me some SVU.
Dun, 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 dun,
Gotta
dun,
watch
dun.
some true crime and get me a glass of wine. Like that's the days I've had some days lately. And so it's like, what's
Yeah.
going on?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really interesting. And and I gotta say this, I gotta put this out there. A lot of times when there's no HR department, you leave it up to the person who has the most authority, and then that's the physician. And then they don't always know how to talk to people. And because they
True.
don't always know how to talk to people, it becomes more of a bigger problem because they couldn't handle it before it got to them in the first place. And I've seen it. I've seen it, the way it works, and then it creates a ripple effect because now everybody is working out of fear rather than working to do their job. And so
Mhm.
people are afraid to react. They're afraid to say something because it got to them, and now it's out in the open. And now nobody wants to do anything to neutralize the situation. Between the physician who is the HR, the boss, the owner, and when you're dealing with smaller practices anyway, making the environment conducive for everybody to work and work happily. Mhm.
Right. And let's talk about those high performers. There are high performance workers and, production coders, billers, auditors that are on your team and they're work at a high performance. But if they start to burn out and they start to feel like they're doing other people's work on top of their own, which is happening a lot,
A
then
lot.
they're going to go where they're valued, and they are going where they're valued. So then you have this turnover, and the high performance you were expecting is now not there anymore. And so you're like, why aren't we getting charges out? Why isn't money coming in? Because you didn't take care of your high performer and didn't see what stress they were under, and you just buried them so deep that they had to dig themselves out, and now they're gone.
Yep. And then now you see that all the work was done by that high performer. And so I saw a TikTok video where they was like, well, I'd really like a raise. I'd really like this. I'd really like that. And they were like, well, I'm afraid that we can't do this for you. So we're going to have to let you go. Okay. So they let him go. Bob is gone. And so like, well, can somebody explain this? No, that was Bob's job. So can you explain this? No, that was Bob's job. So next thing you know, the next frame, you see the person asking Bob to come back, and Bob is walking out with his backpack. He's like happy and things. But again, it
Yeah.
doesn't always end that way, right? You're not always to get that person back. So, and they're not always cross-trained, right? So the silence becomes deafening, and then it becomes detrimental to the practice because they didn't realize how valuable that one person is. So
Right.
very true.
And on the clinical side, you have patient safety risks, you have communication breakdowns that happen, and some things you can't walk back, you can't take
No.
back. There's this damage, reputational, cultural damage that can be done. So those are some of the things that are the costs on top, not that I won't even talk about monetary costs. I won't go there, but those are just other costs that often lead to financial costs down the road.
Hmm.
But can you catch this early? Can you see the red flags before they come?
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about some of these nonverbal cues. In my book on Clear and Connected, which I know all of you have, right? You all have bought that book, right? It'll be in our show notes if you haven't bought a copy yet. But let's talk about the nonverbal cues. There it is. She's got a copy. For all of you video viewers. Now, sarcasm, eye rolling, the negative body language, those can be seen visibly. And let me tell you, have you ever seen someone
Oh,
who
yeah.
wears everything on their face? Like, I've seen those Instagram reels where they're like, the girl is like trying to, with her friends reacting with her face. She has to like nudge her to like, so she can smile because she's showing that all over her face. And I just love that one because it's so true. Some people, your friends, you're gonna nudge them. Hey, you're showing your negative face because your eyes are rolling, you look sarcastic. Like those, they naturally do it because they're annoyed. And so some of these people out there, that's just their natural reaction to what they're going through, and they're going to show it all over their face. So do you see those things? Do you react to them? Do you know your team well enough where you know when they're frustrated, that they're getting burnt out?
I think, one, you have to be conscientious of what your staff is thinking, right? If you're in your office all day and you're not seeing what's going on, right? And when you come, there's silence. That's a problem. That's a
Yeah.
sign that they are knowingly avoiding you, right? But you have to be so transparent that you need to see without seeing. You need to see from behind rather than being obvious to know that there could be a problem. And so from a leadership perspective and from a management perspective, you have to see your staff when they think you're not watching to know that there are red flags. You have to. And if
Mhm.
you're able to do that, then you can catch the problem before it gets bigger. But if you don't care and you're in your office all day, then that's just the writing on the wall.
Absolutely. And, something that can sometimes creep up on remote teams and it's harder to catch is gossip and division.
Yeah.
So, there can be two people that are like thinking similar and they're frustrated and they're kind of coming together and having their own private phone calls. Maybe they're having them offline via text message. So you can't track it in Teams or Google Meet or whatever, however you track your stuff. Does your team know that legally you can read their emails? And maybe they know that, so they're taking conversations offline, and you don't know that. And what do you do about that kind of stuff? Like, you're not going to really be able to know that. You can't like, call the phone company and get a copy of their phone records. Like, you can't.
Right.
I mean, like, there's some things you can't do, but we need to try to find a way to get that information and have conversations, meet with your team regularly, get to know them on a personal level, and let them know that you're here for them, that you want to address any inconsistencies in processes and efficiencies. And as a leader, and we both know this, we can't always tell our team everything all at once. We have to give them things gradually. And so sometimes they can feel frustrated because they don't think that an issue they brought up is being addressed, when in reality it is. So give them enough to let them know that we are addressing it, and it's not going to be as quick as they would like, but we are addressing the situation that they're experiencing.
I also think that sometimes, and we gotta be very conscientious of this. Even though there's a bandwidth issue, you still need to meet. Oh, we're not going to meet this week because we have this many patients. Next thing you know, it's 3, 4 weeks later and you haven't met, and you don't know that there's a problem with the computer system or the EMR system or with the drawers. Or so it's, I think, one of the biggest things that biggest mistakes that a leader can make is to not meet and not meet to understand the culture, to see the eyes rolling or to see the reservation of opening their mouth. Then that's the opportunity for you to take them to the side and say, you know what, I think that there's a concern. Let's talk about it. Let's do something, but you have to create the door and you have to create the opportunity, right, for them to want to say something. Because if they're silent and you notice that they're silent, but they look like they want to say something, that's your cue to present something to them to make it more personal so that they can feel comfortable with
100%.
talking. Yeah.
Right. You gotta hold yourself accountable too as a leader. Like, you're accountable to your team, so you gotta make time for them. And for me, I have to schedule everything. I have to schedule my nail appointments. I gotta schedule time to have breakfast with my husband, because there's just so many things that I do that I have to remember and have it scheduled. And Jessica has to schedule, to remind me to do things on a personal level, because that's how crazy my schedule is. But I make sure to do it, because if I don't have it on my calendar, I'm going to forget. And it's important to me that my team gets time with me every week when they need me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of but the thing is that when you realize that you need to make time, that means it's important. But when you are so out of the loop that something happens and it's big news, not I knew that was coming because we talked about it before, right? Then it becomes more of a situational issue that could have been avoided had those meetings been regular, right? You don't want anything to be so broadsided that you don't see at least an inkling that it could possibly be wrong, right? You've got to be able to have those conversations where the people that you trust can be transparent when they need to be.
Right. So when you start seeing these behaviors, let's talk about these strategies, practical strategies. Document those behaviors as early as you can. Get them on record so that it can be reviewed, because that's part of that employee's permanent record. And they need to know that it's going to be documented every time that they have stepped out of line and it's violation of a policy. They have to know it's going to go in their permanent record. And make sure, obviously, most healthcare organizations, especially bigger ones, they know it's their responsibility to have a compliance plan. Some smaller ones aren't quite up there yet, but those of you who have a compliance plan, kudos, we're clapping for you. And in that compliance plan, I'm sure you know to have a code of conduct policy and having a policy for things that are unique to your organization. So here's the deal. I learned this at a conference this past year that was so helpful to me. When my own leadership, when I started to experience toxic behavior, I was so glad that I had gone to the session because I hadn't experienced it yet. And then it was like, as soon as I left that session, like a few weeks later, I experienced it and I was prepared. So you got to make those policies so stringent, and you have to follow through on them. You have to follow through on your policies. You don't have to fire someone, but you make it so difficult for them to be toxic that they just leave, right? And that's okay. And I love that idea because that's what this practice did. They had a toxic employee. Nobody wanted to fire her because, she'd been there so long. Physicians trusted her, and it was just too hard for them to think about what if, right? So they just made, and the policies were not difficult. They were policies that every organization should have. But that's how bad this was. They had to get a new office manager in there, and this office manager just basically made everyone follow this and wrote them up and made it so difficult for you to continue your behavior. It was so enlightening for me, and I don't necessarily think that my team is going to be to that level, and I'm glad they aren't. But if it does get to that and we have some unforeseen circumstances that creep in, you might be thinking you hired the best people in the world and something happens and you have to deal with it. And so set those policies now, get them, really, not want to say strict, but like get them so tight that there's nothing that they can do or you can do to get out of them. Because you've
Right.
partnered with HR, HR is on
Hmm.
your side, compliance is on your side. You've set clear expectations from day one. They've signed that they read the policy, which is evidence that they've read it, right? That means they're going to follow it. And if they don't
Yeah.
follow it, you can hold it in front of them and say, you signed this on this date, says that you wouldn't do this, but I have evidence that you did this. Let's
Right.
address it.
And I think also, especially with when it comes to compliance and education and training, right? One of the things they say is that you need to handle things in a consistent manner, right? You have to, right? And so if everyone has signed the policy and you know that those outlines that are in the policy are very specific, then whoever is out of line, who falls out of that curve of being consistent and following policy, right? They need to be handled consistently, I should say, because if they're not, then that also creates silence because it also creates toxicity because it's favoritism. So you need to be very clear on what your policies are, understand what they mean, and be able to enforce them consistently across the board to, again, get a clear understanding that there's a no tolerance policy for following policy.
Absolutely. So fast
Mhm.
forward, you've done all of this. You now have
Mhm.
an amazing culture. Protect it. Protect
Yes,
it like you protect your firstborn child. And
absolutely.
you've worked so hard to build this. Protect it with every fiber of your being because that's what is important is the organization. The people are important too, but collectively the organization represents everyone's vision, or it should. So protect
Absolutely.
that culture, protect everything, and just be okay with being uncomfortable because the minute you get comfortable, you have a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and but as with any organization, when policies are created, they also have to be reviewed, right? They have to be tweaked. You can't be so unwilling to review it when it's time that you have to adjust it because someone has a problem. You have to be able to make sure that you are understanding the expectations, your employees are understanding the expectations, and that when they are not followed, you are followed through consistently, and that everyone is on the same page. And that is a cultural responsibility for as being an employee, knowing what the expectation is, understanding what policy is, and knowing when that policy is not followed, that it'll be handled and it'll be handled in a consistent manner, for sure.
100%. Well, that does it for us today, guys. We're very looking forward to our next episode, which kind of dovetail into some of this conversation on
Mhm.
building resilient teams, mental health in healthcare workplaces. So
Oh
we're going
boy.
to talk about we're going to on a deeper level, right? We're going to dig into some
Yeah.
of the common mental health issues that are affecting people in general and that are filtering their way into organizations and in the workplace.
Yeah.
And we're heading into the holidays, guys. We're heading into times where people are very much burnout and there's things they're dealing with on a personal level that you'll probably never know about
Yeah.
and that maybe you've never dealt with or never will deal with, but they're dealing with them every day. So we're going to talk about some of this so that we have to get real. We have to understand these things. And I think it'll be really helpful for us to kind of slow it down and just really meditate on how to do this better and how to really be a person as we're leading our teams. So thank you
Absolutely. The
guys.
humanization of leadership, definitely.
Absolutely. Let's do it. So next week we'll be back for another episode. Thank you for your time today. And thank you for always supporting the Practice Perfect podcast. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for joining us on Practice Perfect. Today's episode was written by Jennifer McNamara and produced and edited by Gabriel Fast with Highland Forge Media. Want to support the show? Visit practiceperfectpod.com. You'll find bonus content, ways to donate, and the option to sign up as a guest or submit your own questions. And the easiest way to help us grow? Share the show on social media and spread the word. We'll see you next time.